All right, welcome to this Q&A. Again, welcome to this Q&A. So, question came up, Purim question came up before, right? And that was there's a mitzvah, as most people probably know. If you don't, you find out now. And that is there's a mitzvah drink normally more than you normally do. It's only mitzvah. It's only mitzvah in the Torah you see by any holiday. To drink. You have on Passover, you have on Shavuos, you have on Sukkot, you have on what do you call it? Shavuos, right, as well, right? The major holidays where there's a mitzvah to drink wine and eat meat, right? There is a mitzvah to drink wine and eat meat. It doesn't mean, you drink enough to get plastered. We say, Ein simcha l'basar v'yayin. There's no greater joy than eating meat and drinking wine. Now, some people don't like eating meat or drinking wine. So, if you don't like eating meat or drinking wine, okay. But, even if there is, that corresponds also to sacrifice that were given. So, you're doing that in remembrance of that as well. So, you keep in mind. So, you keep in mind that, in that case, what do I have? That if you don't like it, okay. There you don't see there's a mitzvah to drink a lot, right? Let's say on any of these other holidays, obviously on Yom Kippur, you're not eating and drinking anything, but okay. So it's one of the more stranger or strange things that makes very clear that a person to drink. Now, obviously, if they can't or they don't like it or whatever, the idea is to know or not know the difference between Baruch Mordechai and Arahama, right? Blessed be Mordechai, cursed be Haman. The interesting enough, a person can test themselves how much they drank. The gematria, the numerical value of the words Baruch Mordechai, blessed be Mordechai, and Arahaman are the same, right? So gematria means you have a letter, each letter corresponds to a number, right? Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3, right? So the numerical value of both are exactly the same. So a person, obviously if they drank, right, then, are they able to make the calculation? If you have difficulty making the calculation, maybe a person will have difficulty making the calculation if they don't drink, but either way, even if if they have difficulty making the calculation, then, then they're probably good. But let's say a person can't drink or they don't want to drink. So the way to not know the difference between blessed be Mordechai and cursed be Ammon is through sleep, right? If you sleep, you don't know the difference, right? So a person could, take a nap and fulfill your obligation that way. But again, it's very, seemingly a very strange command, to drink, certainly to drink where you are, inebriated, right? I'm not going to say totally plastered, but whatever, a person's got a buzz, they got a high, whatever, right? Whatever it is. So simple reason, throughout history, and really this is the point that, let's say for the sin of Adam and Eve, right? What did Adam and Eve do? They ate from the tree of knowledge, right? Forbidden to eat from the tree of knowledge. They eat from the tree of knowledge, brought death to the world. So there were people in history who tried to fix up the sin that they did, right? One example, obvious example is Noah, right? What did Noah do after the flood? So the Torah tells us what happened to Noah. He built a vineyard, right? He planted a vineyard. And what happened when he planted the vineyard? He got drunk. And then the whole thing with his, two of his sons cover up his nakedness. One of his sons sees his nakedness, and then it's a whole curse, and all that. So what's going on? So you can say, Noah saw the whole world, destroyed, and decided to, plant a vineyard and, wash away his sorrow, so to speak, from what happened in the world. One way of looking at it, potentially, but the way normally, I mean, that's a good way to look at it. But a deeper way of looking at it is that Noah tried to fix up the sin of Adam and Eve. Right? We're working hard throughout the millennium to bring the world back to where it was before Adam and Eve sinned. Now, there's only one time in history that ever occurred. The only time in history that ever occurred was when giving the Torah Mount Sinai. Now, Jews were on a different level, right, at that point. And the evil inclination, Mr. S, the Sultan, whatever you want to call him, understood that if they go into the promised land and they're at that level, his job's over, right? So what did he do? Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to get the Torah, and he makes an image of Moshe Rabbeinu in a coffin, right? So they thought he died, so they make this intermediaries and with the golden calf, and right, it's going to be next week's parsha, not this week, 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we're going to read about it, and then the world goes back to where it was, and still the Messiah hasn't come. So first of all, had Adam and Eve not eaten from the tree, they would have been in paradise. That would have been the end, right? God would have had a purpose for creation. That would have finished. But obviously that didn't happen. So now God has to go to plan B, right? Throws them out of the Garden of Eden. They have to die, right? They have to go through death. That's partial atonement, and all that. Very good. Very good. But at Mount Sinai, they got to another point. They got to that same point. And what happened? What happened? Comes along Mr. S, the Sultan, whatever you want to call him, and he makes this image of Moshe Rabbeinu. They sit with the golden calf, and we're still stuck, in exile today. So that's kind of a short version, but in either case, what happened? The sin sort of got erased at that point, and Messiah could have come, but obviously it didn't happen. Now, Noah, what did he try and do? So he tried to fix up the sin for Adam and Eve. So what did he do? So he made wine, right? He planted a vineyard, and he made wine. Now, the Gemara says there are a number of possibilities of what the fruit of the tree of knowledge was. Some say it was wheat. Some say it was a fig, because they covered themselves up with fig leaves. Some say it was grapevine. It was grapes. But nobody says it's an apple. Very interesting. Not sure where the idea of an apple came up, but the Gemara does not entertain that possibility. So what was his goal? What was his goal? His goal was, I'm going to take this wine, I'm going to take these grapes, I'm going to make it into wine, right? And the grapes were what Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. So what am I going to do? Measure for measure. I'm going to fix up that sin, and I'm going to make the vineyard. I'm going to plant it for the sake of heaven. I'm going to fix it up, and everything will be great. Well, what happened? He got plastered, right? Same way he got drunk, and we know what happened after that. Now, what's the point? So Achashverosh throws a party for 180 days, right? Showing off all his wealth, which really inherited from Nebuchadnezzar, was Vashti's father. Regardless, he was showing off all his wealth. At the same time, showing off all his wealth, he's showing off the fact that he has some of the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash, of the temple as well. But everybody had to come. This 180-day party, everyone had to come. Right now, people couldn't say, well, making the same food we eat, so we don't want to come, or or the drinks or whatever. So Achashverosh said, I'll take care of everything. Whatever you want, right? You want kosher food? I'll get kosher food. You want kosher wine? I'll get kosher wine. You want this? I'll get this, right? For every nation, for every province. So what happened? Jews had to go. Jews had no choice. Okay, so what was the sin? Right? What was the sin that they deserved annihilation from? So one answer, not the only answer, but one answer is that they enjoyed it too much. I can tell me they had to be there. Okay. Right? 100% they had to be there. Very good. They had to participate at some level. Okay. So the sin was that they enjoyed too much. They got too much enjoyment. So now at the end, when Haman is killed, so the book of Esther says it should be joy of great feasting. Joy of feasting, joy of great joy of drinking, right? Let's say. So measure for measure what happened. Measure for measure. So you have to have a festive meal. So that festive meal has to be on the day of Purim, not at night. You eat a little bit more after the fast than you normally would. Yeah, you're not going to eat this fancy meal, but if you would eat this big fancy meal and drink or whatever at night, you don't fulfill your obligation of having the meal, because the meal, that festive meal for Esther, Achashverosh, and Haman was during the day, right? So to commemorate that, we have this festive meal. Very good. Now, comes with this festive meal, what are we going to do? We're going to drink, right? You're going to say, come on, what's this command to drink more than you normally do? What's the command to drink till you don't know the difference between blessed be Mordechai and cursed be Haman, right? That's measure for measure. That is the measure for measure. Comes on the Jewish people that got too much enjoyment at the meal, and that's what it's going to cause their annihilation. But comes on Mordechai and Esther and the Jewish people fasting for 3 days, and what happened? They annulled the decree. They're able to annul the decree. Very good. So now, for generations, after that, it's going to be feasting on that day. It's going to be drinking on that day. Just the mirror opposite. What's the mirror opposite? The Jews got to enjoy too much, whatever, so we're going to do it for the sake of heaven. Now, this is kind of a hard thing to do, right? Because the Gemara in Eruvin says very clearly there are three ways we test a person in this world. Kaso, Kiso, and Koso. Kaso means how a person gets angry. Kas, right? How he gets angry. It's one test. Kiso, how he deals with money. Is he honest in business? One of the first two questions that a person will get asked after they die. One is going to be, did you learn Torah? And the other is, were you honest in business, right? So, difference of opinion, which question you get first, doesn't really matter, but a person can be tested, certainly be tested in this world, how they use money. Are they honest in business? Very good. There's a third thing that a person can be tested on in this world, and that is how they drink. Now, people don't drink, so good. So not a test for most people, or for some people, right? Now, what does it mean? It's a test. Because, again, what do we say? We say, Niknas yayin yotze sot. Enters the wine, comes out secrets. Because when a person drinks, they don't have to drink that much, but, they drink a little bit more than they normally do. Very good. So if they drink, what happens? They have fewer inhibitions. Fewer inhibitions means that, they sort of climb out of their shell a little bit, and they probably will say things, potentially, they will say things that you would say maybe not so appropriate, right? At the end of the day, what happens? At the end of the day, we have an idea like this, that when a person, in general, when a person drinks, so as we said before, you have less inhibition, right? You have much less inhibition. So if you deal with it in a negative way, so that's harder. That's worse, right? Why is it worse? Why in general is it worse? It's worse because what's going to come out of a person's mouth? Yeah. So if what comes out of a person's mouth is going to be garbage, now it doesn't mean you can't have fun, right? We're not saying you can't have fun. There's, plenty of fun to be had on Purim. Very good. But at the end of the day, what happens? Sometimes you get carried away. Sometimes potentially you may say things you shouldn't say. So a person's going to be careful. How much they drink, and all that. Or you just drink a little, you drink a little bit and that's it. Right? But that's going to be a test. Right? And the big test is you are taking something physical, i.e. food and drink, And the question is, are you going to be saying words of Torah? Are you going to be trying to draw close to God to the best of your ability, right? Or is it going to be not that way? Or are you going to say all kinds of stupid things? Now, saying stupid things doesn't nullify the day, right? Again, within the spirit of the day, right? But if that's all you're going to say, right? So that's going to be a problem. So here's where we're going to differentiate, right, with the Christians in general, and that is we have the ability to sanctify the physical. Very good. Now, is that easier? Is that an easy thing to do? It's not an easy thing to do, right? You're drinking, you're eating, you're drinking, whatever it is, right? It's a much harder thing to do, right? So what do we do? Or what's the goal? What's the end goal? The end goal is to use it properly and to have the right things come out. But if a person knows, as halacha is, person knows they're going to say things, they'll probably do things. They're not going to be able to pray. They're not going to be able to say blessings. They're not going to do other things. Yeah, because they drank too much, then they shouldn't drink. Right? Then for sure you shouldn't drink. Right? But that's the reason, one of the reasons, measure for measure. Right? Why that is the case. It's a very strange thing. Right? It's an extremely strange thing. Yeah, that there's going to be an obligation. 100% is not a question over here. 100% is going to be an obligation to drink, right? For sure, there's going to be an obligation to drink. Yeah, but you don't see it by any other holiday, right? So that is partial explanation, at least on that. Somebody asks, somebody says, what they say, whose lips sink ships, yeah? You gotta be careful, right? But again, sanctifying the day, right, through physical means by eating and drinking, that's a higher level, right? That's even higher level than Yom Kippur, because even though Yom Kippurim, right, Yom Kippur is a day like Purim, where do they equal? Even though the total opposites, where do they equal? They are equal in prayer. It's a tremendous day for prayer, but they're two totally different days. Yom Kippur, you feel like a piece of dirt. You're eating, you're not eating, you're not drinking, right? You're fasting. Okay, you're beating your chest for all the sins you do and all that. Very good, right? That's one mentality. Purim totally opposite. But where do they come together? What's the common denominator? Prayer, right? It's a tremendous day for prayer, right? No question. Someone who says, name of Abe Lincoln is better remain silent and thought to be a fool than the speaker remove all doubt. Yep. Yeah, it's one of the greatest things the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says. That what's the best thing? What's the best thing for a person? Shtika. What does shtika mean? To be quiet, right? So sometimes the best things are not said, right? There's good reason, right? There's very good reason because you may regret, what you say, and a person can say, oh, I didn't mean to say that, but as we said before, it's part of your psyche. You thought it. Right? It's part of your soul. It's in there. So even if you said it, you said, oh, I didn't mean to say it, but you thought it, right? You can't say, oh, that wasn't part of me, right? It's part of you, right? You saw something, you heard something, whatever. It's part of you, right? Your soul records it, right? Just like we're recording here, your soul records it. Very good. Yeah, but even though your soul records it, doesn't mean a person should say it. But when a person says it, you can say, oh, I didn't mean it. It's not really what I believe. Really? Right? How is that not what you believe? You said it. Right? You made it clear. You made it clear that's what you said. Yeah, it's not a question, oh, that's not what you think. That is what you think. You made a mistake and said it. Right? As you mentioned many times. Someone asks, okay, how do you deal with the angel of the Lord being called the Mapat? Yeah, Tetragrammaton. I don't know. What's the problem? Yeah. There are groups in the world. I still don't really get it. I mean, I get it to a certain point, right? There are certain groups, in the world, their whole goal, what do they spend their time doing? I don't know how much time, but what do they spend their time doing? They spend their time trying to say this 72-letter word of God. Yeah, now I understand why. Because it's got a lot of power. Right? It's got tremendous power. Very good. Yeah, be careful when you say this name, right? Just like in anything, Just like in anything else, we're going to deal with it on a Kabbalistic level, which I'm not going to, but like these type of things, okay. Yeah. So if that is called the ineffable name of God, right? Whatever that means, 72 letter name of God. Very good. So you got groups trying to figure out how to say it. That's what they spend their time doing. Again, I do understand to a point, and the reason is it's got power. Okay, it's got real power. Very good. And what else? All right. So you ask me, do I have a problem with this? An angel being called that? Why would I have a problem? If that's what the angel's name is, so you got an angel's name is, called Matats. An angel Gabriel. It's like an angel Michael. It's an angel, whatever. Right? There are angels that have different names. Very good. Yeah, so what? So an angel of the Lord has his name. There a problem? What's the problem? I haven't, there's no issue that are called that name. Whether you should say the name, right, or say an ineffable name of God, that's a different issue, right? I don't think that's what you're asking, right? I think you're asking, how do you deal with it? So he's got, they have a name, okay, right? Okay. So that's the name. We're not praying to that, right? We're not praying to that angel per se. That'd be idolatry, obviously. Right? Obviously, that'd be idolatry. So, idolatry, total prohibition, one of the 7 no laws as well. Right? Idolatry totally forbidden. So that's what I would answer. I don't think, we say it's in Malavein Moirit, right? Doesn't go up, doesn't go down. Like, okay, so that's the name. So that's the name. Do I have a problem with it? No. People want to try and pronounce it, this and that. Okay. Right. But, I think there are more things to worry about. Definitely think that more things to worry about. I do get it why people want to pronounce certain names and seem to have certain level of power, maybe doing it. Okay. Do I have a problem with it otherwise? So that's the name. So what? Yeah, what is I love questions like this because on a daily basis, keep in mind one thing, right? We try to make things very, very practical, extremely practical, right? Things that are not practical or like somewhere in the stars and whatever, leave it there. It's not my department. Other people, will speak about these type of things and go deeper in this, in the, speak to angels and other things. That's what people want to hear. Okay, great. Yeah, I think there are more fundamental things to know about than that. A person wants to see the depth. You read the book Derech Hashem, right? The way of God. He speaks about it, right? He speaks about spiritual forces. He speaks how they work, right? And all that doesn't go into detail. I mean, it is very much steeped in Kabbalah, but even without Kabbalah, he's just telling you in general, how these forces work and what they do, and all that. Okay, right? I think for most people, that's enough. Someone says, I want to deal more with it. Okay, but again, you can't run till you learn how to walk or crawl, right? And you can't study calculus if you don't know algebra or trigonometry, right? So a lot of things, sound very like, very spiritual, very deep, and this and that. I can go through the Torah as it is, bring it very deep, without all this. So it's interesting. Like I say, it's not interesting, right? But in the bigger scheme of things, then what? How does that affect someone, in everyday life? Now, again, if a person's going to say the name, wants the power and this and that, okay. Yeah, but practically speaking, there are more, much more fundamental things to know and understand, right? Than that. So when it says name was passed on a certain tradition, special way, okay, whatever it is, we pronounce it. And how we pronounce it, okay, right? again, I get these questions a lot where people go, say, "Oh, what about this?" And this angel and this thing, but you're talking about things, that are way above that. There are people, again, there are well-meaning people that will, cut it down, bring it down to size, and maybe give it over. Okay, they can do that. They can do that. Yeah, I'm certainly not going to do that. It's interesting though, but I find more often than not that things that are have no practicality whatsoever, people want to know about, right? And deeper things that have no practical ramifications at all, right? And someone take me to task about something, it's like, see, rabbis don't agree, and rabbis don't agree, and they say, they can't agree on different things, so they don't really know, right? But keep in mind, we have clear-cut Jewish law, right? We know what to do. We know what goes into filling, right? We know what the laws of Shabbos are. We know, okay, there are differences of opinion, but we have clear-cut ways of doing things, right? So there are many, many things, the majority, vast majority of things, we know what to do. Okay, certain things we're not clear on. Okay, so either you go stringent or you become more lenient. But there are things that don't make any, that have no ramifications, whatsoever. Right? I'll give one example, right? A few other questions I want to deal with here, right? But I'll give one example. So the Torah says very clear at the end of Parshas Bereishis, it says, I think it says over there at the end, that Noah is married to Naamah. Yeah, Noah is married to Naamah. Very good. What does Naamah mean? What does the word Naamah mean? Comes from the word Naim. What does Naim mean? Nice. Her ways were pleasant. Her ways were nice. Very good. Right, very righteous woman. Okay. Now, there's an opinion that is brought down that Naamah was really married to the king of the demons. Right? Ashmedai, as he was called. She was married to him. Okay, so now I get difference of opinion. Yeah, I got difference of opinion. Who was she? Was she married to Noah? Or was she married to the king of demons? Right? So I got difference of opinion. Now, I remember I asked my Rabbi this question, and he just laughed. He just looked at me and said, okay. I said, well, who was she? Was she married to the king of demons, or was she Noah's wife? Yeah. Now, are there any practical ramifications, such a thing? No practical ramifications. Now, is it an interesting subject? Right? Is it an interesting subject? Yeah. Who was she? Could she have been married to Noah and Ashmedai also? It's not a contradiction. Yeah, she could have lived hundreds of years. Not a contradiction. Yeah. Yeah. But practically speaking, things like this have no practical ramifications. None. So it's a difference of opinion. So who's right? We don't know. Right? We don't have a clear-cut answer. Right? There's a difference of opinion. When it comes to Jewish law, we have answers. Right? We go in a certain path. Either we're stringent, we're not, whatever it is. Right? We have clear-cut guidelines. That is no question. But it's entertaining in a certain way, where people say, see, the rabbis don't even know. See, they don't even know. Clear. Okay, it's a difference of opinion. Very good. Yeah, and it's not clear. Okay. But explain to me what the practical ramifications are besides making fun of the rabbis and say they don't know what they're talking about. 99% they all agree on most things. You don't know the difference of opinion in the Gemara, very good, but we know how we hold. We know what we do. So things do not have practical ramifications, and this has come up a number of times. See, they don't know. See, we're gonna make fun. See this, see that, great. What's the practical ramification? None. Don't question, they don't know. It's a difference of opinion. Who cares? It's not practical. And if it's not practical, what does it matter? What does it matter? Either you tell me she could have been married to both, or you tell me no. Or you tell me it's a difference of opinion. Very good. Now, when a person wakes up in the morning, they're about to wash their hands, and they say Moda'ani, is it really going to matter? Is it really going to matter what her name was? I saw who she was married to. Practically speaking, is that a ramification that's going to bend people out of shape? No. No one's even going to think about it. No one's going to waste any time on it. Yeah, but it can happen over time. and over centuries and over the millennia, yeah, there were things that weren't clear. Okay. And there were different opinions. Very good. But practically speaking, it comes to Jewish law, those things get clarified, right? Those things get clarified. In this case, it's relevant, right? So good. Who's the servant in Isaiah 53? Oh, good question. Who's it talking about? So we believe it's talking about the Jewish people. Yeah. We hold the Jewish people. And the suffering servant in 52 and 51 is also talking about the Jewish people. Right? Christians get bent out of shape and say, no, it's talking about JC. Very good. Yeah. But if the suffering servant in previous chapters talked about the Jewish people very clearly, how can you tell me in chapter 53 and all of a sudden it says, nope, it's talking about it? Someone here said that was passed on. Very good. On present judgments. Yeah, he was taken away. End of the generation protest is cut off. Okay, so yeah, very good. Yeah. Any other questions here, Donald? Yeah. Right. Someone says, you have to have a troll because you must be doing something right. Okay. Right. So Donald Remich and Zilla. Okay. That's what Nama was. Very good. Very good. So, again, it's very interesting, who she's married to. Yeah. Doesn't make 1 ounce of difference practically for how a person's going to keep Torah and mitzvahs. No. Right? But people are going to say, oh, see, the rabbis don't know. See, they're not even clear. See, this one thinks this. See, this one thinks that. Okay. But you have, we've spoken about this before. I'm not going to harp on it. But we have differences of opinion that have no ramifications whatsoever. And we have differences of opinion. We know what to do in practical things. Laws of blessings, laws of Shabbos, laws of kashrus, laws of prayer, all these things. All these things we've answered. With clear-cut answers. Right? What to do. Now, Sardik has, their traditions. Ashkenazim have their traditions. Very good. But most of them agree. Like 98% they agree. Few things they do differently and this and that. Okay. Doesn't mean we don't know what we're doing. Doesn't mean there are no answers. Yeah, there are things that we're not sure on. 100% we're not sure on. Right? But even if we're not sure on it, when it comes to practical Jewish law, we have answers. Things that don't have any ramifications in practical Jewish law, okay. So there's a difference of opinion. That's a terrible thing. That's all the rabbi knows what he's talking about. It's not clear. Right? But, I think it's funny. I think it's, it's pretty hilarious because, no one in the ultra-Orthodox world or the modern Orthodox world are losing any sleep over this. Not losing 1 ounce of sleep. Maybe she was this one. Maybe she was married to that one. Maybe, okay. But there are no ramifications. You want to tell me that Ruth has to be Jewish for the sake of King David and the Messiah? Okay. That has ramifications. And how can she convert? Right? It's not just David's mother had to be Jewish. She had to be Jewish. Right? Because there's an opinion that says that a Moabite cannot join the Jewish people all the way down. All the way down, even if the woman converted. So the woman converted, so her son and daughter said, oh, it's Jewish. Very good, but she was a Moabite. So there's an opinion that says that kid stays a Moabite for all generations. That never changes. Okay, so that's a practical ramification. How you're going to show beyond the shadow of a doubt that Ruth is Jewish. Good. That you need to do. Right? Even for the Christians, you need to do that. That's practical. Right? So there are answers. There are answers for that. But these other things that don't have any practical ramifications, whatsoever, because they see the rabbis don't know. See, they're not clear. This one says this one says that. So what? So they don't have clarity. Okay. But it doesn't mean anything. It means absolutely zero. Because practically speaking, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have any practical ramifications. If it had practical ramifications, okay, we need an answer. We have answers. Right? How Jewish law is going to go and how we're going to hold and what we're going to do. That's very clear. But the other things are not clear. And people harp on it because I have been taking a task for it, and I think it's funny. It doesn't matter. It's totally an irrelevant point. Just because they disagree, on something that's totally irrelevant, it doesn't matter. And so what? Doesn't have any ramifications. Zero ramifications. Yeah. Purim coming up. Can you explain why they didn't have music? Who says they didn't have music? They didn't have music back then? Can't imagine they didn't. Right? They had musical instruments. They had musical instruments in the time before Noah. Musical instruments already existed. So how could they not have musical instruments? And even if they wouldn't, let's say they wouldn't, you don't think they sang and danced? Even without musical instruments? Why not? But musical instruments already existed well before that. Hundreds of years before, 1,000 years before. Yeah. Someone invented musical instruments. Very good. So who said they didn't have them? Right? Who said they didn't have them? But even if you want to say, well, they didn't make them, they know about them, I don't know. I find that kind of far fetched. But even if you want to say that, yeah, who said they didn't sing and dance and weren't, dancing in the streets? You need music for that? I don't know. Most people today, I don't want to get into this topic, but most people today say that, the music is out there saying it's not really music anyway. Yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of noise, and it's kind of like, you know, some of it or a lot of it, taken from non-Jewish tunes and different things, which, I would say a good part of it, probably, probably, not, I'm not saying it's good, right? I mean, that is the reality. I think that is the reality, right? But, the music today, you know, I would think that, the music back then would have been better, a bit more wholesome than it is today, right? Even though, it can be inspirational music. I'm not going to say not. There's a question how you can take verses from the Torah and Tanakh and make songs to them, right? And sing a beat to them. No question how you're allowed to do that. It's not so clear. It's not. It's whatever. It's not so simple. I mean, people do it. Not but it's not so simple, right? It's much more complex. Much more complex. Really shouldn't be done. Really shouldn't be done. But you see, most singers out there, famous or not, that's what they do. They take certain verses, let's say from Tanakh, from Tehillim, from the Book of Psalms, from other places, yeah, and they make tunes to them. And they sing to them. I mean, some of them are very inspirational. Some of them get a person to a certain level. The Vilna Gaon says, it's very high spiritual level. It's called Shar Nagina, right? The gate of music. And playing instruments, a huge thing, if it's used in the right way. Today, good question if we define it as music, but even if we would, yeah, who says doing it that way is good? With everything, everything, all things being equal, can it be inspirational? Sure, it can be inspirational, right? But again, taking verses from Tanakh and putting a beat to it, even if it's a kosher beat, let's say, it's not so simple that you're allowed to do that. Yeah. Why? Because that's a desecration over here, right? That's a desecration over here, of Tanakh. So I'll say it's probably better not done, but there are going to be many that are going to disagree and say, look at all these people that do it, and it's inspirational, and it's this. Okay, but what I'm pointing out is not so simple, right? Not so simple. Dominator says words aren't believed. Better to ask questions when offended by words. They may have no attachment to the words. Okay, you're right. Person may have no attachment, but they said it. The fact that they said it means, by definition, they thought about it. Person doesn't just say something for no reason, right? They don't make a statement for no reason in general, right? Why do they say it? Why do they say it? Because that's what they think. Now, you can tell me they may not have thought it for very long. Okay. That may be true. Maybe they didn't think about it very long, but guess what? Once they thought about it, it becomes part of the psyche. Yeah, and now all of a sudden it comes out. Very good. The fact that now it comes out, they can't say, well, I didn't mean it. They can say slip of the tongue. They could say that. But what does slip of the tongue mean? It means you said it. Yeah. Means that's what you meant. Yeah, but it came out faster than you could stop it. The Gemara at the beginning of Ksuvis, right? It talks about the fact that a person, has lips, has teeth. Yeah, so there's certain things that can stop a person from saying something, or at least make it more difficult for them to say it. Okay, so that's very good, but doesn't necessarily stop you. I would say it doesn't totally stop you, but it'll make it more difficult to do in a certain way. Okay. So you have deterrents that will stop a person from doing that. But think about it. If a person thought about it, we'll make it easy. Let's say they thought about it a lot. So when they say it, it's already been thought of. Yeah. It, they already thought about it in different ways. Many different ways, potentially. But even if you say they didn't, okay. But once they said it, even if they say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, or they only say that when they get caught. But the fact that they said it means that's what they think. For better or for worse, that's what they think. Now, you tell me, but it wasn't thought out. They didn't look at any information. They didn't. You're right. That doesn't matter. Most people today, right, throw everybody under the bus. Most people today have certain opinions that are totally not thought out. Totally not thought out. Saw something on Wikipedia. They saw something on the news. They believe it's the gospel. Yeah. Did they research it? No. I told somebody something once many years ago. Many, many years ago. I told them something, what do you know? This, that. Right? 2 weeks later, they come back with the same exact thing. Yeah. So I said, I told you that like 2 weeks ago. A month ago. So no, I saw it in the news. Yeah, it was before the internet, right? BI, before the internet. Yeah, I saw it in the news. The news is gospel. What you say, who cares what you say? Yeah, news is gospel. Okay. But then I tell you that 2 weeks ago. If it's in print, it must be true. Today all the more so. But how many people have actually researched anything? Like seriously, researched it. Same lies keep getting perpetuated all the time. No, nobody cares, right? You know what they say? If you hear the lie long enough, it sounds like the truth. Yeah, it sounds absolutely like the truth. So you got to do you got to look at the information. You got to deal with information. You got to evaluate it, right? It's called evaluating evidence. You got to evaluate the evidence, and you got to weigh it, and you got to look. You got to look. Is this true? Is it not true? And why? What is this side saying? What's that side saying? Do they have evidence? Where are they getting it from? And all that. You have to look objectively, and that's how you write a term paper, right? Someone says, you can prove the Torah 99%, I got 1%, free will. All right, kind of a silly thing to say. Only a Jew would probably say this. So I said, you write term paper? I had to write term papers in college because I was a history major. So I had to write like 10 pages, 20 page term papers, this and that. So I said, how do you write term papers? I said, you got a thesis. Very good. Yeah, and you spend the whole paper trying to prove it. It's beautiful. I said, what happens if you leave the end in doubt? Let's say you write in your final conclusion and you leave in doubt. So, well, I got evidence like this and not exactly what we said over here. And you leave it out. Oh, no, you can't do that. So why not? He said, if you do that, you'll fail. You'll get an F. Very good. So I said, okay, so what do you have to do? So this guy tells me, you have to prove the thesis and you have to evaluate the evidence and then you draw your conclusion. I said, okay, say that again. He says, okay, you have to, prove your thesis and evaluate the evidence. I said, one more time. I said, this is beautiful. I said, one more time. He's like, what's the point? I said, listen to what you just said. You have to evaluate, you want to prove your thesis, okay, but you want to evaluate the evidence. You want to evaluate the evidence and prove your thesis. Right? That's what you want to do. You want to prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt. But you have to evaluate the evidence. You can't just say something ludicrous and say, well, that's my opinion. I mean, people do it. I've heard people do it. It's kind of funny in a certain way. And and my answer will be, okay, that's very nice. I said, based on. I said, like, where's your evidence? Someone once told me, you know where my evidence is? Right here. It's in my heart. Okay. Do you have any other evidence? It's what my heart tells me. Well, the heart, the Torah says, you're not supposed to stray after your heart and after your eyes. So the heart can be deceiving. Right? Anyone been in a bad relationship? The heart deceived them? Heart can deceive a person. Okay. But that's what it says in my heart. Okay. Do you have any hardcore evidence? Any hardcore evidence at all? Anything you want to bring to the table besides what you feel? Somebody cares what you feel. What we feel doesn't matter, right? The Devarim Shabalev ain't no Devarim. Words of my heart don't matter. What I think, what I do matters. Yeah? So thinking does matter in many ways. But what's more important than thinking is action. Judaism is about action, about what I do. It's not about what not necessarily what I think, but what I do. So someone can't say, well, it's imprinted right here. Show me evidence. Show me something. Well, that's my opinion. Take it or leave it. Okay? Right? Can't argue with the bricks. Not very much fun. Yeah. They're not giving you anything. They're arguing. They're just saying that's my opinion. So what? Who cares what your opinion is? Not based on anything. Yeah, it's based on an article on Wikipedia. Leave me alone. Okay. Yeah. Most people probably don't know how to argue, but the point is, what's the point of all this? Most people don't think. Right? They don't evaluate evidence. They listen to what they hear in social media. They listen to what's on TV. They listen to other garbage, and that's how they form their opinions. It's not done through research. If someone brought me research and they're going to tell me I got evidence for this, that, and let's have a discussion, let's evaluate evidence, okay, beautiful. I don't have a problem with that. I have no problem with that. But they don't do that. They don't do that. They just give like Webster's 9th definition and say, I'm holding that as truth. Really? They're going to start doing this. Okay. This is what you believe based on quote unquote all your research, right? Or this is what you think. Okay. Yeah. All the money you have in the bank. Everything you own. Are you going to put that on the table and say, this is absolute truth? And there's absolutely no way you can go against it? Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's stupid enough to do that. No matter how much money they have. Even if they have reserves somewhere else. Nobody's going to do that. Why? Because they know. They know they don't have an answer. Or, what they think. What they think. Have they researched it? No. I haven't taken a survey, but I am pretty confident. Most Jews after the age of bar mitzvah, 13 in a day for a boy, 12 in a day for a girl. Most people, if not almost everybody, in the secular Jewish world, have ever taken a course in Judaism after that, usually. That's where Jewish education ends. It's bad Jewish education. I'm not talking about they grew up Orthodox or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm Reformed conservative Jews, which they know nothing. Yeah, they know very little. Okay, how many people have taken a Jewish course at some sophisticated level after bar mitzvah? Very few. Very, very few. I'm not going to say nobody. It's not nobody. But it's very, very few. It's evident. They have the same Jewish education as they were when they were 5 or when they were 8. No, like they sat down and started reading all these books. And okay, people interested in Judaism will do that. They will do that because they want more knowledge. because they're thirsty for knowledge. Okay. The vast majority of people, they want fantasy. So they're not going to do it. 100% they're not going to do it. So you got, let's fast track 30 years. Yeah. And they become very opinionated on these things. Okay. So where's the research the last 30 years? You're at the Torah. You're in the commentaries. You learned Gemara now. You learned any of these things? You got evidence? Where's the evidence? You got to base evidence in archaeology. Great. Gonna base, you're gonna bring, evidence for other things. Most people don't. They'd rather die than think. Yeah, 95% rather die than think. That's what Bernard Shaw said. 4% think. Sorry, 1% think. 4% think they think. 95% rather die than think. Who's thinking out there? Who are the big philosophers out there? Unevaluated evidence. That's my opinion. Okay. That's beautiful. That's your opinion. And you must have done like years of research. You must have, all this evidence built up. You must really have thought about it. They crumble after that. They know you got them. Right? And then they'll make up something. Oh, you're fanatic. You're this, you're that. But you ever learned to lick? Why is your opinion valid? Why do we have to validate it? Because it got to be politically correct. You want to draw something close, yeah, you have a discussion. But someone's strongly opinionated, and I was telling someone yesterday, someone convinced, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that you can only make mayonnaise that has milk in it. I said, I know plenty of companies that make it without milk. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, it makes sense because if someone wants to have, a sandwich, a bologna sandwich, and they like it with mayonnaise, you can't have it with milk. That's milk and meat. That's a problem. Right? So it's part. The person want to make me look like an idiot and said no such thing. There's no such thing. Okay? You researched it? You're a chemist? Yeah. Which I should have said. You're God's gift to the world in chemistry? In food chemistry? You're going to tell me based on all your evidence? There's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as mayonnaise as parv. Yeah? No such thing. Okay, I got 3 bottles I can show you right now. 3 bottles. But you know what? Even without going into that, you don't even have to go into that. You want to make me look like an idiot? Okay. Put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Yeah? You got money? Good. Put down $30,000. Yeah? Look at the ante. $50,000. Put $50,000 on the table and say you're right. And there's no such thing. $50,000 put down the table. They ain't going to do it. And if they do, they're an idiot. Because they know they didn't do the research. But they all talk a good game. Some of them. But they're loud. So I can be loud. I can also scream loud, yeah? But it doesn't make any sense. They could die like Haman based on their beliefs. Yeah, but they're not going to put money down. They're not that stupid. Yeah, maybe they are. I don't know. Someone's going to put $50,000 down to say there's no such thing as parv mayonnaise. Come on, I'm waiting for someone to do it. Sucker bet. Sucker bet. Yeah. Plenty of things out there that's parv. Yeah, when it comes to mayonnaise. Like someone who's a food chemist. The first I'm thinking, wasn't a dummy. Not gonna say he was a dummy. In this case, yeah, he's an absolute buffoon. Yeah. He wasn't a chemist. Someone wasn't a food chemist. Not even close. What I should have said. Right? You always think of these great lines later. When this person's not in the world anyway. But at the end of the day, it's a good test. How much you willing to put down? How much you willing to put down? Someone's got money, I'll up the ante. A lot. Yeah? Yeah, put your money where your mouth is. Put down $50,000. Put down $50,000, prove it wrong. To prove your point. Now, are they going to be that confident? Unless they're stupid. They're not going to be that confident. There's no way. But what are they going to do? what are they going to do? They're going to believe beyond the shadow that they think they're right. That's what they're going to do. Yeah. And they'll believe all these lies of all the things they heard. And all the things they're going to make fun of. Like, yeah, this is true and that's true, but never happened. It never happened. So people get caught up in the lies. And people get caught up in the fantasy. Yeah. I showed some university students many years ago how to read a newspaper properly. Just go there once a week. And different things that were brought in the newspaper. Yeah. And what politicians were saying and others were saying and what the Torah says. They were like shocked. They were flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. So how can they keep saying this? So I told them, very simple, the motto of the day was, still the motto today, I would think, if you tell the lie long enough, people are going to believe it as the truth. And that's it. And that's exactly what happens. Keep saying the same thing over and over and over. And it's just, the lie's the same. The lie stays. Yeah, but people just fall for it, like all the time. Yeah. So, a person's got to be careful because, like anything else, first of all, you don't want to look like a fool. That's one thing. But the second thing is, if you're going to make a statement and you're going to make a strong statement, right? Let's say, okay, even if you're going to make a strong statement, have evidence. Absolutely have evidence. Don't just say it because this is what your parents said or your grandparents said or who knows who, right? You got to show evidence. You got to show something. Now, there are people passionate, very passionate about things. Very good. Very good. But at the end of the day, it's not like they did the research. At the end of the day, they're saying things, quoting, maybe quoting what other people have already said, and what they said was a lie. And who told them? The same liars. Right? So they're going to perpetuate the same lie. That's the way it works. But, we live in an upside down world. So even today, I said this years ago, many, many years ago, that even when you tell the truth and you say the truth, it still sounds like fantasy. Because and I know, and and I know what they're thinking. And then when you say it, you find, you feel like you're a missionary in certain ways, but you're telling the truth. But the truth doesn't sound like the truth. Why? Because we're living in what we call an alama de shikra. We're living in a false world, right? A world of falsehood. So even the truth doesn't sound like the truth. That's how far we've gotten. That is, that's how far we've gotten. But today, people aren't, most people are not interested in the truth. They don't care. Even if you can prove them wrong, they still don't care. Okay. As I mentioned this before, I told someone, just tell me you don't want to be inconvenienced. Finally, they said, if I tell you that, you leave me alone? I said, yeah, in some things. So they admitted it. I don't want to be inconvenienced. Okay. That's better than saying garbage and saying, well, it's not for me. That wasn't the question. I can never do this. That's not the question. Is it true or it's not true? And how do I know it's true? And if it is true, what are my obligations? That's the question. That absolutely is the question. Yeah, but again, there are people out there that don't care. I'm going to do this regardless. Okay, does that make any sense? Does it really make any sense? They don't care. Because if they look into it, they find out it's true and they have to change. They're not going to change. I had one person say this over the last 30 years, 32 years. So they were honest. I haven't met too many, I haven't met anyone honest, intellectually honest from that. In the secular world. I've heard all kinds of things. Yeah. But most of it's like Webster's fifth definition. But this is the problem, and keeping kosher is the problem with trichinosis. What does that have to do with trichinosis? What does that have to do with cooking things better or whatever? Right? Someone tells me this is a kosher restaurant. I said, you're eating a bagel. No problem with trichinosis over here. Not talking about meat. Wow, good question. Next. Whatever. Pass salt. People say things because of what they heard or what they think or what it is. Yeah. All kinds of misconceptions. And, you call them on it, they're like, oh, that's so interesting. But doesn't affect them. It has zero effect. Okay, these are people you're dealing with because they're not interested in the truth. They don't care about the truth. Yeah, so they'll say things to say things, but you say, well, it's not true, right? You know, one other example, someone was saying when someone was gay, he said, you can't say anything, they were born that way. They have a special gene. So as they're like going on and on and on, you know, I got one line in. I got one line in. The one line I got in is, you know, but science hasn't proven it. Stop them dead in their tracks. I go, science hasn't proven it. That's not true. So I don't care. And started going on. Totally emotional. Not based on facts. Not based on facts. Right? So that was it. That was the end of that. You know, and you can't tell me otherwise. I said science. You're into science? Yeah. You're into medicine? Yeah. Normative medicine? Yeah. They haven't said anything about it. They haven't proven it. For sure hasn't been proven. Yeah. For sure hasn't been proven. So what they say? They said it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. What do you mean it doesn't matter? Is that I don't care if it hasn't been proven. That's what I think. That's in my heart. Very good. No evidence. They're not going to change. I mean, this person's in, you know, the next world, wherever they are, but, you know, they're not going to change. They're certainly not going to change. Well, they found out the truth now. But, you know, so who cares what's in your heart? You have a tremendous bias here. Unbelievable bias. But because of that bias, it clouds the way you think. Yeah. And then you say things that don't make any sense. Right? So all you have to do is inflect, right? And tell the person, did you just say this, that, and the other thing? I had someone once tell me there's no such thing as right and wrong. So I called them on it. So I said, really? So if I take a shotgun and blow someone's head off, that's not right or wrong? They no, you know what I meant. I said, no, you said there's no such thing as right and wrong. I said, so, you know, I'll give you an opportunity to clarify the statement. Yeah, but then no. You know, I didn't mean it like that. Okay, so what did you mean? There's zero right and wrong? Right and wrong depends on. Yeah, what does it depend on? Depends on what society says? Is God in the picture? Like, what, you know, what's your definition over here? But I called them on it. Totally called them on it. You know, they understood. But, you know, first thing, be careful what they say. You know, sometimes I would say it's not worth it to call someone on it because you're not going to get anywhere anyway. But, you know, there are times you call someone on it. Say, really? Come on, really? This is what you think? Yeah, no right and wrong, never right and wrong, nothing. Yeah, any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions? Find me on Facebook at Michael Koff, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, OrthodoxConversion.com, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. Doing videos, Q&As, Ethics for Fathers, Book of Leviticus. Want to send me an email? RabbiChaimKoffman at gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman at gmail.com.